What are the specifics? What's this supposed new law actually entail starting in 2026?
Well, the core idea is that when you sign that marriage license after 2026, it becomes this kind of binding legal agreement where, yeah, infidelity is explicitly an illegal act.
And the consequences. What kind of trouble are people saying you could actually face?
The rumors swirling in the source material suggest if your spouse has enough evidence, solid proof, they could potentially get you arrested or sue you.
Wow. Arrested.
Yeah, and the consequences mentioned are pretty severe. Jail time comes up, being sued indefinitely, having to pay damages like free emotional harm, even physical damage is mentioned.
Huh. One comment highlighted in the source even painted this picture of, like, sitting in jail while being sued and still having to pay up.
Right. And another angle mentioned in the source is framing it simply as, violating the contract, the marriage papers themselves.
Which is interesting because that kind of leads directly into why the source material itself seems pretty skeptical about this whole thing being true.
Exactly. It brings us right to the debunking part, based on the source.
Okay, so let's look at that. What reasons does the source give for doubting this claim? Why does it say this probably isn't happening?
Well, the main point the source brings up is the actual legal nature of marriage, at least in most places. It's described as a civil union or, a civil contract.
Right. And you don't usually get thrown in jail for breaking a civil contract, do you? That's more for, like, criminal stuff.
Precisely. That's the key difference the source material highlights. Now, it does acknowledge that adultery is technically illegal in some states. I think the source mentions 16 states in the U.S.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, but, and this is crucial, the source clarifies these laws are generally just not prosecuted. They're not enforced in practice. They're kind of just there.
So they exist on paper in some places.
Yeah.
But they're basically dormant laws.
That seems to be the case. And the source also notes the actual trend isn't towards making adultery a crime. It's more towards decriminalizing it in those states where it's still technically illegal.
Okay, that makes sense. The source also raised a really practical point against it, didn't it? Just thinking about the logistics.
Yeah, a very down-to-earth question. I mean, where would you actually put everyone if cheating suddenly led to jail time? The sources point out that jails are already described as, overflowing, overpopulated, even with existing crimes.
That's a pretty solid practical obstacle. And did the source touch on whether making it illegal would even, work? Would it stop cheating?
That's another angle. The idea presented is that, look, making it illegal might not actually stop people. It could just, make them sneakier about it, push it underground.
Or find other ways around it.
Potentially. The source mentions it could even inadvertently encourage things like polyamory, as people look for ways to structure relationships outside a law targeting traditional infidelity. So, yeah, these points are raised as reasons why it's probably impractical and maybe even ineffective.